Pucks with Haggs, brought to you by Prize Picks.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, what game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right, and that's Prize Picks. All right. Welcome into another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. This is the 247th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I'm sure my good friend and colleague Mick Colageo is going to call this the Torrey Krug episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. But welcome in my friend Mick Colageo, and please tell them where you can find your work, Mick.
Well, first off, I did think of Krug, but I thought him second. The first thing that hit me was Kastelik. That guy has become a freaking he's like one of those drills that the city of New York uses when they're going to make a new tunnel. You know, they dig in there and then they send in Kastelik to spin like this and just bore the hole. And that's what he does now for them. It's amazing. So thrilled for him as a person too to come back from the really what I thought were career-threatening head injuries last year. And so he's really been great. To play his style, play his game, and do that. So, yeah, where they can find my work, Rink Wrap. I link to it on X and Facebook, and I'm in the Hockey News Money Power issue with the Bruins article. And if to stay true to form for the last few years, I anticipate an email asking me to do their prospects issue again, the Bruins end of that. That'll be really juicy this year.
Should be, yeah. They some much better prospects now. They really reloaded the cupboard and added to their NHL roster and the AHL roster and just their organizational prospect list with the moves they made at the trade deadline last year, trading away veteran players and stockpiling draft picks and prospects. And speaking of some of those prospects, I'm sure a guy like Will Zellers will end up on that list. And he was added to the Team USA camp for the World Juniors this past week or last week. I think it was this week. So he's in the mix along with, I'm sure, James Haggs obviously would be in the mix for that team. So there will be good Bruins representation on that Team USA. Have you done any sort of digging into these prospects as of yet, Mick? And a guy like, let's say, Will Zellers, who we haven't talked much about because we've talked a lot about Letourneau and Haggs.
The guy could certainly finish. The highlights I've seen really remind me of the kind of things that Murat Husnudinov can do from an athletic standpoint. He's pretty exciting to watch. How anything translates to professional levels is always a question, because Trevor Zegras was going to be the greatest thing since Sidney Crosby when he gave us to Michigan. So I mean, I just think we're at a point with these guys where, they got some talent here in the system, and it's going to be fun to watch them progress. And hey, if he gets a shot on a bigger stage, then we get a better idea of where he's at. You know, so I'm a little disappointed that Elliot Grunwald is not on the list of defensemen for this team, because I really think that this kid, there's nothing about him that doesn't scream NHL at me. He's just so young and so authoritative and routine in how he plays big boy hockey and does everything well. It's just, I mean, there might be guys with better stats, but I'm looking at this kid and he's a linchpin back there for Quinnipiac, and he's freaking second year true sophomore. It's just I just look at him and say, the Bruins have he's just one. He's another left shot. Sure, I wish he played right because they could put him in now, but there's definitely a player there as well. So I don't know. Here's the way that works. I don't make the list. The Hockey News gives me the list. And then my job is to seek out Bruins organization staff, whether it's Coach Mougenel in Providence, if we're talking about AHL guys like Dan Zloch-Mellis, or if we're talking about a college player, then I'm probably going to be talking to Adam McQuaid or Ben Smith and finding out details of where they see these guys and and then if they have a guy that's really high on their list that the Hockey News didn't give me, then I go back to THN and say, hey, the Bruins are telling me that this guy belongs here. Like they didn't even have Merkelov in their list 2 years ago. And,
Yeah.
so, and Bushnell was telling me, what a great player he is. And he's proven that to be true, even though his NHL opportunities have not bared that out. His play in the minors has been tremendous. He's been a terrific player for them. And he's got a terrific pro career. It just may not translate to the NHL. So, how do you measure it? Remember they used to show the draft on TV and you did do interviews with certain heads of scouting or assistant GMs, and then say, what were you thinking? Well, we were talking about who's going to be the first, which player here can get to our team first. And I'm thinking, why would they take such a short view of this? That always puzzled me.
Yeah.
I think teams are now more publicly embracing the longer view when it comes to these players. These 18-year-olds.
Yeah, and that's part of the lack of hesitation now with taking college players, right? Because that's sort of a built-in 3 to 4 years of for most players, 3 to 4 years before you really are even thinking about integrating them into your system. Maybe even more than that if it's before they get to college, but intend on playing college hockey. So that.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess there are some players though that you can tell that they're going to be bona fide NHL players because they're closer to actually playing in the league, because they're more physically mature at a younger age. And you know what I mean? You can project them a little bit more as opposed to guys that aren't quite as physically mature at 17, 18 years old. And it's going to take them, 3 to 4 years to develop physically to the point where they can handle being in a man's league. There's just those other freak athletic guys that are at 17, 18 that could potentially be in the league because, they're already at that level at 17, 18 years old. There's not many of those guys, but there's definitely some of them out there. But to your point,
Alex
yeah.
Steves, his comments after the last home game that the Bruins played were really telling, because he kind of caught me off guard with saying that, I only added the physical element of my game over the last 2 seasons. I didn't really have that
Right.
before. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't realize that, because he looks such a naturally physical player out there that I'm just kind of blown away that this was something he realized. I don't have this. In order for me to survive as a good professional hockey player with NHL potential, I have to do this. And here he was. Well, he's like 24, 25 now. So he was already aging on the long end of the critical 3-year window that people start making up their minds about players when he decided that he needed to do that. Kid's incredibly aware.
Well, he's also built to play the physical game. Like, if he wasn't playing it before and he's built like he is now, he should have been playing, certainly more physical than he is. But I agree with you that when you actually watch him play, he doesn't look like anybody that is, was ever hesitant about it or never had that as a part of his game. He looks like somebody that there's zero hesitation and it's just automatic that he's going to finish checks and go in as hard as he can on the forecheck and be the first one in there and be a guy that's like, there's zero like pause or hesitation in his game whatsoever. And I say that in a real, complimentary sense. Like, he's somebody you really, really notice because the effort level he puts on every single shift, because of the physicality, like the cherry on top of the sundae physicality that he puts on the end of his plays, and really like finishes everything hard. You notice him out there, extremely noticeable. And it's great to see not only that, but also, the finishing of the offensive plays and the confidence level and all the other stuff you can tell is starting to come for him as well at the NHL level. And, when it gets to the point where it is now, you're really seeing an effective guy that believes that he can be at that level. And it's fun to watch. And it's also like that they needed at least 1 or 2 players like that to develop from the AHL for this year's team, especially a guy that could play top 6 kind of minutes in situations for them to round out their forward group and really have an effective deep lineup. And I think he's, really added to that. So it's been very impressive to watch that and to watch him. One thing I was going to say is that, Mick, even now, like a guy like Connor Bedard was a first overall pick. And usually those guys come right in and make a huge impact. And everybody thought he's going to be a generational player right off the bat, the next Sidney Crosby, like all this stuff. And it took him like 2 years to physically adjust to the league. He's not just now being the player that I think people thought he was going to be a couple of years ago, right off the bat. And to your point, it's even taking guys like that a couple of years to really adjust and get their game level to the point where it needs to be for them to be that like franchise player, that best player on the ice, the guy that's going to make everybody around him better and sort of like one of those, generational players. It took him 2 years to figure it out, to get that compete level up, to get the physicality level up, to get everything up to the point that it needed to be for him to be starting to be mentioned in the same breath as the best players in the league.
That's absolutely right. You could really see it on opening night. It was startling, actually, to see the way he
Yep.
could throw hits, the way he could take hits and not just feel like he needed to be quicker and elude people. He actually
And was
took
just
hits to
fighting
make
for
plays. He
pucks,
just had
just
attitude
fighting
too.
for pucks,
Yep.
you
He
know?
just he really had attitude. He was like, I'm sick of losing. I've done my
Yep.
off-season work. I'm coming in and I mean it, and I'm gonna be better. And you'll and he's playing like he's got something to prove, and he's proven it. He's really impressive this year, Bedard.
No question. All right, let's get into last night's game, Mick. 5-2 win for the Bruins. The second time they've won 5-2 against St. Louis. Really impressive victory. They did not play great in the first 10 minutes or so of the game, did not get off to a good start. I'd say the second half of the first period, they kind of found their legs, scored a couple goals in the second period, really pulled away in the third. 2 goals for Fraser Minton, 2 goals for Mark Kastelik, however you want to pronounce
I
it.
think his father called himself Kastelik, but apparently Marcus told us it's Kastelik. I
Kastelik,
mean,
yeah.
when he first got here, that's what he said anyway.
David Pastrnak returns to the lineup. Really interesting the combinations that Marco Sturm used, where he put Kastelik and he put Tanner Jeannot down low with Sean Corrali. He put David Pastrnak in sort of an almost a third line situation with Kuznetsov and Fraser Minton. And, he kept Alex Steeves with Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm. I think he likes the look of that line and he likes the way that they play. And he obviously kept the second line together because they've been really good and had good chemistry. And he got, it worked. 2 of the guys that he moved around, he got 2 goals from in those new line combinations. And it's credit to Marco Sturm for not coming in and just putting like Geeky, Lindholm, and Pastrnak together because Pasternak's coming back into the lineup and sort of realizing he's got some good chemistry on some of these lines. He's got some things that he likes, and that he wanted to move the pieces around to accommodate that. And I thought it created a situation where, they had, a 10, 15-minute period where they were sort of feeling it out in the first period. But after that, they got rolling and those lines all looked really good. And I think that's another credit to a coach and a coaching staff that I think has got a pretty good finger on the pulse of what's going on with this team and how they're going to respond, and knowing that even though guys like Jeannot and Kastelik get, maybe drop down to the fourth line in this situation, they both come out and play great. Jeannot had 6, 7, 8 hits in the game. Kastelik has 2 goals. Corrali was all over it as well. They were getting all kinds of lunch pail, blue collar goals, tipping pucks, carving out space in front of the net, really doing the dirty business that a fourth line would need to do in order to like get some offensive success. And it was impressive to me to see the coach make those decisions, them immediately play into the goals, and the team winning the game.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that the shortest ice time was an average of 13 plus for Middlestat, Steves, Arvidsson, and then so fourth line, yeah. But as the game evolved, Sturm went with those guys, and it was incredibly balanced ice time. It looks like one of the
Yep.
most balanced ice forward ice time sheets I've ever seen. With these guys, uh, you know, so packed together. They were like their ice time last night against St. Louis was like a microcosm of the Atlantic Division standings. It was
Yep.
they're all bunched together within like 4 minutes of each other, and um, so they all played, and except for Mikey Asamont, who's if Sturm holds true to form, he's going to take the winning lineup into Winnipeg. So unless there's a health issue, an injury issue, then that's going to be 2 games for him. And he's a guy that I don't so sure how well he's going to handle that, and I'm sure the team doesn't want him to handle it too well. But I don't know if it's going to go well. As far as like the long view of Scratch and Asamont, it certainly is something right now that makes me wonder if this may become a footnote to the season. What happens with Asamont from here on out? The way this team is going right now, the way it's trending.
Yeah, interesting point. I think with injuries, he's going to be back in there. With the way the schedule is, they're going to be guys in and out of the lineup. I don't think there are any absolutes as far as the lineup goes, or making too meaningful a read on it, because guys are going to be shuttling in and out of the lineup with injuries. So I think everybody's going to play, even if they sit for a game here or there, especially on the back end. But I think even up front, I think that's probably going to be the case as well. Yeah, and I think the ice time thing's part of that too, Mick. And some of those guys having less last night might have been because the Bruins didn't have many penalties in that game, and that is, and so the PK guys really didn't get a lot of the heavy usage like they've gotten at points early in the year. And that's something that recently I think there's been a few instances in games where I've noticed they're not taking as many penalties, and it seems like the stress on that and the Bruins viewing that and understanding that and acknowledging that as an issue that they had to work on and improve on. I think that started to manifest in the way that they play, and that's notable as well, that when they have a weak spot or if they have something they really need to address or work on, it does seem to get addressed and it seems to get fixed. Another sign of a good team and a well-coached team, I think, is that you're seeing that happening. It's not like there are themes or things going on with this team that they constantly become a chronic problem that aren't being addressed.
Yeah, I mean, last night another so-so start, but that didn't get them into penalty trouble.
Nope.
It didn't start a snowball rolling downhill. I mean, they were able to weather the storm, and they have to be a team that can do that without getting into the box in order to, because not every night you're going to be the quicker team out of the gate. For the Bruins, nights that's not the case. They're just going to make sure it's not dramatic and that they weather it when it happens and get to their game as soon as possible. The other thing I'd say in regards to your my comment on Marco Sturm putting together players in lines is, for me, it's easy to see the part about you don't want to disrupt Elias Lindholm because traction has been so precious for this player. And it's so
Yep.
important that the Bruins have him on a place of traction. You don't want to split up. You don't want to move around Casey Middlestat. If something works, you'll leave it alone because he's fragile. But that said, what do you do? How do you do that? How do you augment? How do you put it together? And that part I got to give Sturm credit, because my bingo card would not have had it the way he's doing it, and the way he's done it has turned their players into a greater than the sum of their parts, in my opinion. So I'm pretty excited with how this has gone after the 6-game losing streak. It really kind of made me think, wow, this could get away from them. And instead, they've been pretty good when they've been healthy, and they're getting healthier.
Yep. Yep. They have been. And even when they were without Pastrnak, they went 3-2. They
Yep.
managed to survive that one way and not miss a beat, really. Like, they had a winning record, and I think they had a 500 record when they were without McAvoy and Pastrnak. And it looks like they may get McAvoy back on this trip as well. He took the trip with the team, has been practicing. It sounds like they're going to try to get him into the lineup, and he certainly looked and sounded better the second time he spoke with the media than the first time after it'd been a couple days, and he sort of said he was sneaking in a little bit of solid food and starting to get, his energy back and everything else. So these are really good signs, obviously, for this Bruins team. And it's, Mick, it continues. I think now you're maybe not as hesitant about feeling about their place within the Eastern Conference and the Atlantic Division being in a pretty good spot right now, as the games played are starting to catch up, and they're tied for first with the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Atlantic Division. And, they are unquestionably in a playoff spot right now and in a good spot here as we head towards the Christmas holiday season.
Absolutely. And they're playing better on the road. And they're going on the road
Yep.
here. They got two more here. Winnipeg is they're having some problems right now. So the Bruins, it would behoove them to strike while the iron's hot. Can they accomplish that? I don't know. But what I do get a sense of right now is momentum. I get a sense right now that there are players who have found a linear growth to their game and role on the team and are playing better in sync with the Bruins, making the Bruins better, and the Bruins make them better. And I think of Jeannot, I think of Kastelik, I think of Minton, and I think of that even though that wasn't the line last night, the fact that Minton is now being brought into situations that kind of indicate confidence on part of the coaching staff and management that he's ready to bite off bigger pieces of the apple here. That excites me. It reminds me a little bit of Kyle McLaren when he was 18 years old, and he was a first round draft pick of the Bruins in the first year of the TD Garden, aka Fleet Center, and the Bruins brought him in that season. And Ray Bourque was kind of his partner before he kind of mentored Hal Gill in the late 90s. He was mentoring McLaren, and there was a certain point at which that season when they went up to Montreal for a game and McLaren's minutes went up noticeably. And I went into the room after the game up there. This is the Montreal Forum, by the way. This is the final full season of the Montreal Forum. And I remember, and I approached McLaren and said, "Hey, when did they tell you you're going to be playing more?" He goes, "Well, they came up to me after practice, blah blah blah." I just took a guess, that they told him, "Hey, we're going to play you more here," and because he had shown that he could handle it, and so and he started doing that, and then Cam Neely, who was in that game, came over and kind of grabbed McLaren by the elbow and pulled him away from me and said, "Yeah, I need you right now. Come in." McLaren had to go and talk to Neely about something, which was basically get him the hell away from the reporter. The last thing Neely wanted to see is a story the next day about what I was talking to McLaren about. He wanted that to go under the radar, and Neely's leadership was on full out display. Now Neely is treats me slightly differently. They win a game and we're standing in the hallway waiting to get in there or walk into the hallway to taking the corner there to get ready to go in the home room. And he's walking past me and gives me a shot in the ribs, So there's a level of trust that you build over 30 years. So.
Yep. No question about it. That's funny. All right, let's take a break, Mick. On that note, we got to talk to Prize Picks, or talk about Prize Picks, our good friends over there. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Generate over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players, it could be pros or sharks. Simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you'll watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. Prize Picks also offers injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss. You can now win up to 2,000 times your money on Prize Picks. They also offer Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Our picks for this week are at Artemi Panarin, more than 1.5 shots on net. Connor Bedard, more than 21.25 minutes of time on ice. And Carter Verhaeghe, more than 0.5 goals. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. I also want to let everybody know that they are listening to the Pucks with Haggs podcast on the CLNS Media Network, and we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS and enjoying all this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content with fellow Bruins talkers like Conor Ryan and Evan Marinofski. There's also the CLNS Media Network and Celtics All Access on CLNS, the NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and Bruins Ringside YouTube channels as well. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the very instant, a new Pucks with Haggs podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, Mick, that is it as far as reading the ads and giving our just due to our sponsors and good folks out there. Let's get into some thoughts from the readers. Cap 77. He always has the multi-pronged questions in our Q&A over at the Boston Sports Journal with the subscribers over there. We love his questions. I had answered some of these, I believe, last weekend in a solo podcast that I did, but I like to throw these at you as well when I have you on. So these are from Cap 77. Number one, props to Alex Steeves for the hard work as of late, both physically and on the score sheet. He stepped up when the team needed him to. Too bad he didn't score on a great shorthanded bid in the first period last night. This was from a game last week. We already talked about Steve, so we can move on from that one. But I think he and Jonathan Aspero continue to deserve props, Mick, as far as I'm concerned. And Aspero, I don't know if this is the case again still, but as of like a couple days ago, he was leading the team in plus minus, playing great, playing really solid defense. No frills, makes a lot of really good plays, makes a mistake every once in a while. Obviously, all defensemen do, especially if they're playing 20 plus minutes a night. But I think, Aspero is like the defenseman version of Alex Steeves, where he's come in, given an opportunity because of injury, and has really shown that he's an NHL defenseman. And I think he's going to be in the league for a while now as a result of the way he's playing.
It was a great testimony to the power of development in the American Hockey League. There are guys who play substantial amount of time there before they get their NHL chance. And Parker Wotherspoon was obviously another one of those guys who came through Boston and has moved on now to Pittsburgh. But he established himself as an NHLer, having gotten caught behind the Islanders logjam of 2021. Now he's in the NHL to stay. And Aspero, and Aspero really kind of helps the Bruins because they needed his brand of hockey as well. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a left shot Connor Clifton, albeit. And the amazing thing is all that AHL experience, 300 AHL games or whatever it is, really have helped him become a guy who can adjust and play the right side for the Bruins under duress. That's not. It's so rare that left shots play right side in the NHL, and here you're doing it with a first-year NHL player early in the season, and he's doing it, well. It's just an incredible revelation. Jonathan Aspero's achievement, just on that basis alone, to me, is seventh player worthy, and the Bruins are starting to have probably a half a dozen guys you could say something like that about, where it concerns stepping up and being a player who's delivering more than what was forecast.
All right, now Mick, as a good son of Italy here, we're going to ask you this second question from Cap 77 about the old country and what's going on over there. The situation with the Olympic hockey venue is a bit exasperating. Given the Olympiad's influence on this year's schedule, the intense desire of many players to make the rosters and play in Italy, etc. Last time I checked, an international rink is supposed to be 200 by 100. What do you make of all that's going on over there, Mick, as somebody that's a rink connoisseur and somebody that has noticed imperfections even at the TD Garden before that needed to be fixed and addressed? Your thoughts on what's going on over there?
Well, since you brought that up, I will note that the highlight of Milan Lucic driving Mike Van Ryn through the glass is from I believe in October 26 or 7, Saturday night game against the Maple Leafs in the
Yep.
2008-09 season.
I
That
remember
is
it well.
after the Bruins' big road trip. So they had played preseason games with the rink incorrect, 2 regular season games before they went on the road. And then finally, that was the night they addressed it. And I was not at that game because I was on the desk at the Standard Times in New Bedford, and people thought I was ducking the media because I was the one who pointed this out. I had actually blogged about it after the 3rd regular season game, home game. I'm not the 3rd regular season.
Yep.
I mean, the preseason games, then they played at home. And I was getting sick of it because all the other thing that I had only noticed was the B. The B, the old Fleet Center era B, was still in vogue, and they had that triple outline, the black around the gold outline. On one side of
Yep.
center ice was twice as thick as it was on the other side. And Chris Hurley liked to tee me up and get me going. So he came over and said, Mick, have you talked to anybody about the B yet? And I'm like, I'm feeling so annoyed. And then I just realized while I was daydreaming, wait a second. If it's wrong on this side of center, is there anything else wrong on the same side of center? And then I started looking at all the dots. And then I realized, holy shit, if I draw a an imaginary dotted line from the bottom of the attacking zone circles across the crease on our end of the crease, which was the Zamboni end, the end that Tukarask defends twice a first and third period, then that would intersect the top of the crease. But if I draw the same line in my head down the other end, it would be clearly above the crease. So the circles were not in the same place, which to me was not just trivial. And the reason is because the NHL, when it came back from lockout in the fall of 05, and this is only a few seasons into it, they wanted to make the attacking zones bigger. They went from 60 to 64 feet, and they shrunk the neutral zone to accommodate it. And the reason they wanted to do that is to give the offense more room to operate. So for the first and third periods, the face-off dot is closer to the blue line on the end that the Bruins shoot at twice a game. Therefore, the Bruins were getting screwed by their own mistake. So you have more pressure. Those forwards, those defensive forwards, are that much closer to attacking the point if the Bruins win the draw in the ozone in the first and third period, because those circles are closer. And by several feet, it turned out to be more than I realized. And so that was a real hockey meaning to it. And that's why the NHL got involved and split the third period. And then when the Bruins went away again, then they fixed the ice. But it wasn't until the late October game, the one where Lucic drives Van Ryn through the boards, that they had learned about it, because I saw Doug Huda when we were set up to do the old New England Hockey Journal show in the studio that we had a little makeshift thing in the room right across from the entry to the locker room. And then when I saw Doug Huda walk by, I asked him, Coach, have you seen it? Have you looked at the rink? And he said, oh, you mean that thing where the side glass meets the bench? I said, no. I said, I'm talking about the rink. Look at the circles at each end. And I've since learned that one of the guys in the Bull Gang almost lost his job over this. And so, yeah. So anyway, that was a story and a half. Now, as far as the rink in Italy goes, this is minuscule. These differences are minuscule. The rink is going to be like about 3/4 of an inch wider on each side.
Right.
So that's not going to really affect the forecheck and the obstructions on the dump ins. And then the neutral zone will be like 1.5 feet, roughly 1.5 feet shorter on closer to the center. The blue lines will be close to that much closer to the center dot. It won't even be anywhere near as close as Boston Garden was 191. This is 196.85. Boston Garden was 191 long. Chicago and Buffalo, the odd end, the Chicago Stadium, was shorter. They were in the 180s with length. Those neutral zones were really short. And this is back when it was only 10 feet from the goal line to the end boards. Now it's 11. So what are they going to, and as far as the comment about the international ice surface being 100 feet wide, we haven't seen that since like 1998 when it was 98 feet wide, when the first Olympics there that the NHL players played in. There was a disaster for Team USA, as I recall, and I think Czechia won that year. They won the Czech Republic won the gold. They that was the last time. It's been NHL dominated by NHL ranks 200 by 85. So this is really just, it's just going to be a little fun. I'm disappointed. I wanted it to be spectacular. I wanted to see it like Gretzky Oilers or the Lemieux Penguins going through the middle of the neutral zone of Boston Garden. That's what I was looking forward to. And it's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be very minimal.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, and I mentioned this before, it comes down to the NHL constantly complaining about the IIHF and the Bruins and the NHL players being at the Olympics, and there's always like a threat of pulling out, or like, there's always something like this going on because the NHL really doesn't want to send their players there. The league and the owners really don't want to do it, but it comes down to the players really wanting to do it. So I think it seems like every time there is an actual Olympic participation, there's always some kind of like issue like this, some kind of complaint, some kind of last,
Here we go.
11th hour threat that they're going to pull the players out if it's not safe for them or whatever. Like there's always something like this because the league really just doesn't want to be there.
Are they going to make us sleep on that caught in the Olympic Village? I mean, yeah,
exactly.
There's a lot of stuff that you're hearing about right now that who the hell knows what it's going to be. But hey, you get a chance to play for your country. Suck it up.
Yep. Number 3, I spent this past Saturday at MSG, Lightning Rangers and BU Cornell, and got to see the Rags home woes for myself. What do you make of New York's home struggles worse than the East by far as opposed to the road? The Rangers' struggles at home. What do you make of it, Nick?
They're getting better. I'm not sure exactly why it. I mean, the thing is that conversely, they were dominant on the road.
Right.
I think they were the first team in the league to 10 road wins. So for them to, here's the thing: there's 32 teams in the NHL, so it's hard not to reach every anomaly possible. So when team does have a strange anomaly, like we suck at home but we're great on the road, then I don't know, maybe it's the personalities of the players on the team and how they get focused, or whether the coaching style brings out a like Mike Sullivan's only in year number 2 now with the Rangers.
Yep.
So he's got and they've gone through some personnel changes. Huh?
Isn't this year 1 for him? I'm pretty sure.
Maybe it is.
I think it is.
My brain is trying to rush things along here, I guess. But
right.
Hey, there's no more. After many years of Chris Kreider no longer plays for the New York Rangers. There's probably a lot of ways that things have been upset there in their room, and things are different, and it takes teams time to come together. And maybe at home it was more difficult for them because New York's a distracting place. So I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but I don't have the answer. I just know that they're adjusting, and we're starting to see them play some good games at home. That's what I'm noticing right now. They're starting to flatten out, and they're obviously not going to keep winning at the rate that they were on the road. It ain't going to come back to perfect even, but in 32 teams, you're going to have some anomalies, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's an anomaly as much as I feel like there's a circus element to the Rangers organization, and I feel like it's probably more prevalent at home or more felt by the players and the entire on ice staff at home than it is when they can get away from it and go on the road. And I think that plays into it. I think there is some dysfunction in that organization. I really do. There's some very unpopular things done by that GM. I don't know if he's very well liked by the players in that room. I certainly think the ownership has been like very volatile there for a long time. And I think those things, tend to reflect on the performance. My opinion, I think that's, maybe why you see a little bit more of it at home than on the road with that team. But to your point, maybe they're also starting to figure it out a little bit and sort of, straighten out whatever the issues were and performing better. But I felt like the Rangers are kind of a messy organization. I feel like they've been for a while now. And really since Jeff Gordon was ushered out when he was doing a great job. I think from that point, things have not been great there. And it's, it's part of their own doing. A lot of it is their own doing. But we'll see what happens with that team moving forward. If there's confidence in one thing, it's that Mike Sullivan's a really good coach, and he will get them removed from whatever other distractions and stuff is going on there and get them focused on the job at hand. And he's really good at that. So maybe that's exactly what's happening right now. Number 4, where will Quinn Hughes finish this season, Mick?
Can't imagine you might as well move the franchise if you have a player this good and this integral to your hockey team that you should, unless he says, get me out of here,
I mean,
then to
don't you
me,
feel
you
like
don't move them.
don't you feel like that's what's going on? Don't you feel like they already know that he's going to end up at the Devils when he's a free agent? And, it's almost like a Kachuk situation where they know he doesn't want to be there anymore and they have to figure something out.
I haven't taken that mental leap. I'm having a hard time believing that he could thrive and be such a good player for them. Now their season is in the crapper right now, but again, the NHL is very tight. It's how many points are they behind? They're 7 points out of the top wild card spot, even though they're the last team in the conference. So they're, I mean, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks, I'm doing everything possible to try to get him to stick around.
Of course.
And I don't know that. I also don't feel like the NHL is ready to have a situation where players trade themselves to be with other players in particular. I feel like
Yeah.
that's a scenario that sounds very NBA to me, and hopefully even the
Yeah.
NBA is getting past it because it's getting past LeBron James. So he can't play forever. So I'm hoping the NHL never devolves to that. And I guess if that happens, then I guess we're there. And if that happens, then it makes me kind of sick to my stomach because the Vancouver Canucks have been in the NHL since 1970. They've
Yeah.
obviously been to some Stanley Cup finals, losing to the
Yeah.
Rangers in 7, to the Bruins in 7, to the Islanders in 4 and 82. There have been had some really highs, some lows. They're a team with history, and it shouldn't be subjected to a player trading himself to be with other particular players. It's just I
I
don't
know.
agree with it, and I don't want to believe it.
I know.
Put
I
me
know.
on.
I
I'm
know.
in denial.
It's well, Mick, it's very unhockey like. It's a very unhockey player thing to do traditionally, to be that way and to sort of maneuver your own way out of a situation or out of a team and go somewhere else. It has happened in extreme cases, obviously, like Eric Lindros in the Nordiques being one of the most famous ones. But it's not a very hockey player thing to do, right? But I also think it's a changing world, and I think today's hockey player is a lot different than before. And I think their players are used to getting their way now, and it's much less about the organization and what they need and what they want being the priority. And you're going to suck it up and play for that team, even if you want to really go play with your brothers in New Jersey. I feel like players like the Hughes kids are used to getting what they want and are used to being able to play on whatever team they want and playing with each other when they want to play with each other on the same team. You know what I mean? And I think that translates over into they feel like they can do that at the NHL level now too. And I
And to
get it
think
on
their
some
dad
level.
was once assistant coach of the Bruins.
Yeah, I get it. I get it on some level. Once he hits free agency, he can sort of make it happen for himself if he wants. So he's kind of got the leverage of saying look, do it now, or I'm just going to do it and you're going to get nothing for me. When it comes to that point. So, and at that point, you can't begrudge a player if they do it in free agency. They can do whatever they want. But maybe there's an open conversation between the player and the team. This is what I'm going to do. Do what's best for you, but just know this is what's going to happen. When it gets to that point. So, maybe he's doing the right thing as far as that goes. And that's why we're hearing his name pop up so much. But I think he ends up in New Jersey. Maybe not. He doesn't get traded there, but I think that's where he's going to end up. I think they're all going to be playing together. Are they going to win a Stanley Cup? I don't know. I really have never been that impressed with Jack Hughes and the way that he plays. I think he's soft. I think he's not going to be a playoff player. I think, Four Nations, I think he looked like a boy among men playing out there. He's not at the level that those other guys are as far as physicality, as far as winning battles, as far as being a complete player. Like, he's a dazzling skill guy. That's almost why I have a little trepidation about Haggs and Haggs himself making so many parallels between him and Jack Hughes. I don't necessarily love Jack Hughes as a player. I respect his talent. I respect his skill level, but I don't respect kind of the way he plays away from the puck and like his sort of like lacking being a complete player. He's for me, he's a one-trick pony that can, create points and create offense, but he's not an integral best player on a Stanley Cup winning team for my money. At least not right now. Maybe as he gets older and stronger and figures it out, he will be, but who knows? But like, I get what you're saying, Mick, but I also feel like it's a changing NHL where, super teams or guys going to want to play with their buddies and things like that starting to happen. It's going to happen more and more. You're going to see more situations like Matthew Tkachuk deciding he wants to play in Florida and making it happen for himself. And I feel like that's just the trend. And it's never going to be as bad as the NBA, but I do feel like that's a trend that's not going away in the NHL.
Perhaps not. I do think that Quinn Hughes is by far the best. The player among the brothers.
100%.
Luke makes a ton of money for New Jersey, and he hasn't shown me anywhere near what it would take me to pay him that. I do feel like he's getting better. Jack in the Four Nations, after the U.S. had outplayed Canada and Bennington held Canada in that game, that championship game at TD Garden, Jack Hughes lost two critical icing races. And as a result, Canada got the critical face-off needed to win the game in overtime. And Bennington stole it for them, and McDavid finished. And that was because Jack Hughes failed in the speed department. Hard sell for me. Here's the other thing. Put them all three there. How's it going to go? And if it doesn't go well, then what happens? Are the inmates running the asylum? I mean, what is the answer if the players are calling the shots?
I mean, I think if you put all three of them together in New Jersey, they're going to be a playoff team. Do I think they're ever going to win the cup if like Jack Hughes is their best player or Jack Hughes is their best forward? I'm not sure. But I mean, they're good enough players that they'll be playoff teams, I think. So, like, I guess it depends on what your level of like them succeeding or not succeeding is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And something right now, they look pretty good with Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah, they do. Dougie's turned into a pretty decent defenseman. He's still not a guy that, I think is going to be a blood and guts, like, I mean, I guess he must play in all situations now with the money he's making.
He's like John Carlson with speed. He's not great defensively, but he's okay. And offensively, his instincts are excellent. And but he can skate, and he's got size. And so there's I've never not liked Dougie Hamilton, the hockey player. So
Yep. All right. Here's one more for you. This is from KJ Forbes 77. Hi, Joe. For all our Bees fans' anger with the lack of effective drafting over Don Sweeney's tenure, I think it's important that we give him and his pro scouting staff a lot of credit for filling in holes and getting the most out of players he acquires, finds, or picks up off the scrap heap. The obvious ones this year are Morgan Geekie, a grand slam, and now Alex Steves. And I would also put Aspero in that category, even though they didn't mention him. but feel like they have usually found effective players to plug in over the years, trading for Zaka for another effective find in Eric Holla, all the way down to role players like Tim Schaller, Dan Paille, a way long time ago. Yeah, that was way before the Don Sweeney era. Parker Weatherspoon, or even undrafted free agents like Kevin Miller. Torrey Krug is an undrafted free agent who would also qualify as a Grand Slam, also before Don Sweeney, I believe. Seeing Aspero, Steve's holding their own in the latest stretch is another example of this organization's ability to find effective players outside of high free agents or the draft. Not excusing some poor drafts. I'm as frustrated as anyone. But since we slam Sweeney for poor drafts and some free agent misses, I'd like to balance the commentary a little bit. I appreciate the balanced commentary here, and I think it's 100% correct.
100%. He's one of the best. I thought he was the best in the league at this until Bill Zito started doing it even better.
Yeah.
To backfill the Panthers and make a repeat of the Stanley Cup possible, which I didn't think was possible with the erosion of that roster. Through the attrition, you lose Brand and Montour, and you somehow manage to come back and win again. They did it to a level that you have to give them the crown. But this has been the legacy of Don Sweeney. He identifies the needles in the haystack. His pro scouts do a great job finding players who are in other team systems who the Bruins think they can do better with. Now, I haven't really followed Justin Brazeau's career, but now Brazeau was in this category as well. He was 50 pounds heavier as a Maple Leafs prospect and then he lost a bunch of weight, and it didn't quite come together for him yet. And the Leafs let him go to Boston, and he started carving out a role with the Bruins as a supplemental goal scorer. He started this season off like a house of fire with his new team. I haven't really followed along to see how that's gone since the first few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
he's got double-digit points.
Yeah, and I would put Parker Wotherspoon in that category as well. They identified a guy just like Aspero, had a ton of AHL because he didn't have the opportunity with the NHL team. But the development work was being done. Hey, every team knows how to develop. Very few know how to draft. It's really hard to draft. It's a bit of a roulette wheel. You got so many factors coming into every choice. The only thing that I've noticed that to me gets in is an under discussed aspect to the Bruins at the draft table is how few players they've gotten over the years from the Ontario Hockey League, which still remains the single greatest feeding entity to the NHL, more than any NCAA league, which has now become the greatest competition to the OHL. And the Bruins have been very light on OHL. When they go to Canada, they tend to go west. They tend to go to way west when they go to Canada.
And they don't hit on a lot of guys that they take either. You know, that's part of the
right. When you don't hit, you get questions. This has always been one of my questions, and this is a question that goes back that makes me wonder about the Bradleys being located in outside Vancouver, and the Bruins being so much like, okay, we'll get our team in a different way. They've gotten some great results with certain guys, but it's just weird to me how they've been so light with the OHL, and they have been for many years. Between Nick Boynton and then there was the goaltender there, Michael Hutchison, the left stick goalie, and there was like even the guitar player, the kid who Matt Lashoff, he traded for Mark Recchi before the 2009 deadline with Martin's Carsooms. Lashoff was from upstate New York, so he wasn't a Canadian from the OHL. But those are like in the first 3 rounds of the draft, it's almost look at the Bruins draft. Look where these guys are coming from. And it's just this ongoing story that I don't quite get. And the Bruins insist. They talk to me. They tell me it's every individual pick. It's the player in the moment. That's what it is. And it just turned out this way. Okay.
Yeah, but they still do, like Patra was an OHL guy, Jack Studnicka was an OHL guy. They still draft guys from that league. It feels like they don't. It feels like they don't hit on a lot of those guys. I think Dougie Hamilton was an OHL guy, right? When they drafted him, so was Tyler Seguin. Um, so like I think when they're like high first round pick, maybe they would go there. It seems like though when they're mid picks, they don't go in the OHL as much as they should or they could. I agree with you, and it seems like they're much more heavy on the U.S. college hockey guys, and the USHL guys, which again, I don't hate because they end up drafting a lot of local guys as a result of that, or guys that are going to be playing in their backyard that they can watch. I don't hate that either. But I think you can go too much in that direction. But then if you're going to do that, Mick, it's like I've said before. If you have a certain way that you're going to draft or certain trends that you're going to follow, and you feel like you're going to miss some of these OHL guys, you better be good at identifying guys a few years down the road that you didn't draft that you can bring into your organization that will make an impact in their early to mid 20s, like they're doing. Like the Jonathan Asperos, like the the Alex Steves, those kind of guys. So at least they're hitting it there. All right, let's one more really quick, Mick. Bruins are 5th on the power play, 8th in the PK. Is that sustainable? If so, who should get the credit?
Okay. The Bruins were very quick when Peter DeBoer got fired following the spat with the goaltender at the end of the conference final. When Ottinger was pulled after they got behind 2-0 to the Oilers in Game 7 to get Steve Spott. And
Yep.
that made a ton of sense because the Bruins knew that with the personnel limitations that they were bringing into the season, that they had to go to the mattresses to get this guy in here and give them a fresh outlook on the power play. So definitely that's a key acquisition here for the Bruins, Steve Spott, to bring in and be assistant coach and run the power play. The penalty kill is something the Bruins have done well for a very long time, with rare exception. And it's nice to see it back where it was. It should be the Bruins. I take it for granted. They're typically a top 10, if not top 5 penalty kill, and they're back in the upper echelon where they belong. To me, you can win the Stanley Cup if you don't have a great power play. You cannot win the Stanley Cup if you don't have a great penalty kill.
Yep. Absolutely true. I agree with you 100% on the Steve Spott thing. Big difference maker on the power play. Very obvious from the beginnings of the season and in training camp that he's an extremely good power play coach. Has them varied with their zone entries, really clever, good zone entries where he mixes them up and where the players are constantly in the right positions and also know where everybody else is going to be. It's seamless the way that they do it and the way that they've worked on it and gotten to a point where it's excellent. And also just the movement in the zone, the plays they have in the zone, scoring plays. You can tell sometimes they work on a certain play or talk about a certain play before the game starts in the power play, and then they execute it and they're able to score, and they vary those up as well. He's an extremely good hockey coach and a very, very good power play coach. You can tell just by the way he runs the practices when he's working on the power play and the stuff that he does. And he also, you can tell, is very specific about what he wants and what he sees and what he likes. Just a really smart hockey guy. One thing I will say about the penalty kill that I think is interesting this year and that I think has changed as far as their philosophy goes is they used to use all of their best players on the penalty kill as well as the power play, as well as playing a lot of minutes 5-on-5. And what they've done is they've gone away from that, and they've gone more to traditional bottom 6 guys on your penalty kill for the most part, guys that aren't going to play huge minutes playing a role on the penalty kill. Giving guys that might sort of die on the vine a little bit as far as ice time goes, a little bit more ice time that they wouldn't have gotten, when Bergeron and Coyle and Marchand were like out there a ton on the PK, and they had like guys that were playing big minutes and also playing on the penalty kill. I think doing that has helped them. a lot. And, obviously Nikita Zorov, I think, deserves a huge amount of credit for the way that he's played, especially with defensemen being out. Hampus Lindholm's a big part of that. Obviously Andrew Peeke is as well. And your goalie is typically your best penalty killer. But and Swayman's been great, but I really like the way that they're using guys like Fraser Minton, like Alex Steeves, like Tanner Jeannot, go down on the list. Well, Elias Lindholm is a guy you'll see out there in the PK, and he plays typically top 6, but he's kind of a little bit of the exception to the rule. For the most part, they're using guys that Kastelik's another one. They're using guys that are bottom 6 guys that they can throw a bone and have them more, and I think that's a good way.
Great observation. And the other than the collateral damage to using your top players is if you have a night with a lot of penalties, it disrupts their offense and it cools the feet of other players who need to get in the game. So it promotes balance. And this takes a village, and that's the kind of team the Bruins want to be. So your decisions in that regard have to enforce it. Credit to the players for performing with those opportunities that make it possible for them to coach to that strategy. And the other thing I'd say about one thing I should have said about Spot on the power play is he's really marginalized the Bruins' level of predictability. It's they've got many more subsections to their power play strategy now that it isn't like, okay, let's go find Pasta in that off wing, left wing circle for the hammer. It will go low to high. It's not always the same thing. There are options within options within options, and they're coached. They went through that. You can see it because they do it repeatedly, but it's not the same thing every time. And it's hard for them to do. Same as you described, going through the middle of the rink. Sometimes they look pretty bad, not creating enough speed to freeze the defense at the blue line for that drop pass that has become such a popular play for the power play around the league. The Bruins haven't been very good at that, but what they have been good at is the variations of keeping that guessing, little plays within that play to keep it so that you can't predict that one play, close on it, and have your disruption in your clear. The Bruins are now finding ways to do that, and the players are not inventing this on the ice, but they're reacting to what they've been told how to be available to each other to make these plays to keep the train moving forward when they get these entries. So every aspect of it has just been dealt with at a much higher level recently.
Yep, I agree. And hey, Mick, the delayed zone entries are not going anywhere, so we might as well learn to love them and get used to them. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, what game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right. That's Prize Picks. The show is also the Pucks with Haggs podcast is a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. Mick, thank you very much for joining us.
Always fun to talk hockey with you, Joe.
Same. Likewise, Mick, all the time, my friend. Thank you, everybody else out there, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.